you guys hear me? Yep, all right. So I was given the easy-ish task of putting about 3 months in about 20 minutes. So if I talk way too fast, I really apologize, because this is going to be a wild ride. This summer, I participated in a ministry called Sports Crusaders. It was founded in 1994 by an Mississippi State basketball player. His name is Bobby Shouse. For some of you, he played in the Game of Change, where Mississippi State went up to Chicago Loyola and played against like the first African-American team against the wishes of the state of Mississippi. Through that, Bobby played all 4 years and realized he was called to ministry, but he realized he kind of had stage fright, didn't really want to talk on a stage, and his singing skills they're all right. I've heard him sing. He's not that bad, but he was just like, I'm not a singer. That's not what I'm called to. So he decided to take his passion of sports and mix it with ministry. I was not expecting to do Sports Crusaders this summer, for those that you know. I was on the track to go to Kansas City, and quickly God just kind of shut doors, opened them, kind of like knocking on the door. Instead of knocking with my hand, I just ran into it with my head and it opened, and that's what happened. So I had training my first week in Hannibal LaGrange University in Hannibal, Missouri. And then for the rest of the summer, I traveled around. Different town every week, different church, different host families. Like, it's weird to say that I had a different family every week, but I did. And I had a different group of kids, and I wasn't always coaching soccer like I thought I would. 1 week I did softball, 3 weeks I did basketball and soccer. So I kept myself busy. But one of the main verses that we used was 1 Corinthians 9:22. And it's the second half where it says, yes, I try to find common ground with everyone, doing everything I can to save some. And we took the common grounds of knowing that around 90% of the United States either watches or plays sports. And about 20 to 25% watch 3 sporting events within 1 week. So we knew that sports is a main way to grab attention, especially for kids. It's a lot harder to get in a kid just with the Bible when you can sneak in. You've got sports and the Bible right there, and they're also improving their skills. So I traveled around just teaching different kids, getting to know them. I have too many stories. If you want to know some stories that are funny, like, just come to me, because I had some wild and crazy kids. Had a kid pray for 5 minutes about nightmares and how he wanted to meet Jesus, and he's just a cute kid. But he's going to be a preacher one day, I'm telling you. This kid, I don't know if you can see him in there. He's in the way back, kind of with a crazy face. That's Joshua. We just travel around. But the main thing that hit me was I had 2 weeks that I did inner city camps. So my first week, I was in this gym in Black, Missouri. If you don't know where that's at, that's okay. I didn't. 75% of Missouri doesn't know where it's at. It is in the middle of the Mark Twain Forest, and it is home of the Valley Springs Youth Ranch. Now, why would the middle of the country be inner city? This court holds about 60 kids throughout the day that come from Northwest, East, St. Louis, Grandview, Gladstone, anywhere that's just rough. Most of them are court-ordered. About 8 to 10 of them were in what was called adoption subsidy, so they're bouncing from foster home to foster home. This is a residential facility. It looks a lot like a campground. There's cabins. There's about 6 cabins all over the place, a mess hall. There's a pond. There's a river nearby. The church is right across the road. It's just an interesting place. There were 62 kids there, and we were told going in, this is going to be the hardest camp of your summer. Everybody hates it when they go. They always have a rough time. The kids don't like them. But for us, that by far was our favorite camp. We got to meet some kids that were roughing out. I met a kid who was there because of gangs. He got caught with weed, and he had guns. Another kid got caught with guns. He was 13. He's there. Another one, lots of fights. Another one was armed robbery. Another one was aggravated assault. Like, these kids are hardcore. They don't mess around. And they were very wary about sending me there. They've never sent a girl there, and I said, please let me go. And they debated, and then I never heard an answer, so I took it as a yes, and I went. It's better to ask forgiveness than permission sometimes. And I found that out. This camp has a cabin of 6 girls. That's it. So I worked with them, and I worked with the older boys, and I had the chance to meet Constance. Constance was from Springfield. I got to meet her, and we bonded over that. The reason you can't see her face is she's court-ordered, so I'm not allowed to post photos of their face, just because they're in state custody. Constance is 15, has a younger brother, grew up in Springfield, didn't live with her dad, just lived with her single mom. The thing that was unfortunate about her life was her mom was a meth addict, and mom tried to find her fix in whatever ways. And that even meant sending her daughter out on the streets to be a prostitute to get those drugs. Now, when I met Constance, she was in the corner chewing on her fingernails because that's how she copes when she's nervous. That's her nervous tick, is she chews on her fingernails. She really didn't want to do anything with the male staff or the male coaches, and I went over to her and started talking to her. And she opened up quite a bit. She had never been to church, really didn't know what that was. She had a Bible that the last residential facility had given her, but she was like, it's Joyce Myers. Who's Joyce Myers? Like, some lady? Was this her Bible before I had it? And we're like, no, like, explained it. And she just didn't know. And that week we went through the gospel, and we did it through each letter, like Dare to Share teaches kids to do. So G-O-S-P, and then E and L are on the same day. And so G is God created us to be with him. O is our sin separates us from him. P is Jesus paid the price, or paying the price. Jesus died on the cross for our sins. And then E and L have to do with eternal life and always living with Jesus in heaven. I don't know why the boys on my team decided that I was going to do Thursday, which is the salvation message. And I didn't sleep that night. I was so nervous, and I was like, I'm going to mess this up. I have these 17-year-old boys who just started realizing that I can kind of play basketball. First day, thought I was stupid, like, tried to get me out, faking. Like, they just thought I was an idiot, and that was fun. I got to prove them wrong a little bit. But anyways, I presented the gospel, but the girls were by themselves because of some drama that had happened, and they wanted them away from the boys. So I got to sit with 6 of them down on the floor, their level, and talk to them. And we didn't ask them to make a decision right then and there. We were like, we don't want to force you into it. Go home, go in your cabin, think about it. We'll be there tonight and talk to you if you have any questions. And I went that night, and Constance was like kind of in her room, didn't want to be talked to, and I went in there and talked to her, and she said that Thursday when she laid in the bed, she was done with life. She didn't want anything to do with it. She hated what her mother had done to her. She hated what the men had done to her in her life, and she didn't think like she could get over that. And it was kind of like Gilbert's song said, like, wound no deep that like Christ cannot heal. And so she said, she just started praying. She's like, I never prayed before. I started talking. Just started talking. She goes, all of a sudden I just felt like I got hit. And she's like, I started praying. I started praying to God, and she asked Jesus into her heart. It was awesome. I still keep in contact with her. We try to go to Black every couple of months to check up on the kids or meet any new kids who may have moved there and start working with them. That's unheard of. They were surprised to see Sports Crusaders do that, but they're very supportive. I also met a girl named Robin who didn't believe in God when I showed up. And I said, let me tell you something, I didn't believe in God, and he changed that real quick. And so every day that we would present the lesson, she'd walk out of the room. She didn't want to deal with us. If you said the word God, she'd just shut down and walk off, which they're allowed to do. She didn't want to deal with it. And I asked her, I said, what is going on? Why do you not want this? And she's like, well, I kind of believed in God once, but some people talked me out of it and told me I was stupid. And I started doing research, and there's no way that God could exist. And I said, oh, really? And so we started talking, and for some reason, she sat in there on Thursday, and I talked to her. Now, Robin is 15 and has a daughter who's 3, who's with her mother. So it got to the point where Robin just wasn't paying attention. I stopped and I said, Robin, would you die for me? She looked at me and she's like, are you nuts? Like, why would I die for you? I just met you this week. Like, you're cool and all that, but I don't know if I'd die for you. And I looked at her and I said, would you die for your daughter? She goes, in an instant. And I said, well, God did the same thing for you. You're his daughter. He died for you right then and there on the cross to release you from that sin. And she kind of stepped back. She's like, whatever. And that's all she said. And I was like, you know what? That'll work. That'll work for now. So I went there that night, and she goes, you were staring and talking to me that entire time of that sermon. Or were you talking? Why didn't you talk to any of those other girls? And I said, Robin, I've been talking to all of them. And all the other girls were like, no, she was staring at me. No, she was staring at me. And Robin's like, you were looking at me the entire time. I said, no, I don't think so. I think that's the Holy Spirit telling you something. And she didn't make a decision. I wasn't expecting her to. It takes a while. 4 weeks later, I went back on a weekend to visit them. She saw me coming in. She ran out of her cabin without telling her staff. So staff think she's making a run for it, so they're freaking out. And they see a random stranger because they didn't see my face, so they're freaking out even more. They're calling the cops, and I said, hey, it's just me. And Robin goes, you won't believe what just happened. And I said, what? What's now, Robin? Like, what's going on? She's like, I believe in God. And I was like, that's incredible. Like, that's awesome. She doesn't have a relationship yet, but things like that take time. And that's a step for Robin. And that's what Sports Crusaders is there for, is we take steps and help them through life and either answer questions if they are Christians, help them understand the gospel more clearly. They're trying to do something new this year, send soccer with the inner city basketball team. They got to raise their own money, their own funds, their own salary. They're not even guaranteed to go once they do that. They were even very wary to even let a girl do it. So just be praying for that, this new step that they're taking of adding another inner city team, because while the other camps are paid for by the churches that are holding them, inner city is funded by fundraising throughout the year. And it costs about $2,000 to do one camp for 40 kids, just with the Bibles and the T-shirts and the devotionals. And so we're trying to rebudget, make everything work. But just be praying for that, because we have to go to the board of directors to see if they will actually let that fly, or if they just, there's a lot of no-go. And we know that we don't like change, and Baptists are really good at hating change. So just be praying for that. The second half of my summer, or a week, but it felt like forever, is I went to the Send North America Conference in Nashville, Tennessee. I got to see David Platt. He's a man that I look up to, very wise. I read all his books. I got to see him and go into other sessions with church planners or with men who had planted churches and were talking about how you could serve your community. And it was just a really cool moment. I went with our BSU, and they talked about, knowing your community. How can you reach your community? How are ways to find out what your community is like? And one of them was you do a survey, which made me think, hey, we did a survey in the BSU in the spring. And what we did is we sat in Blum, and did you do it, Gilbert? We asked questions, and it was right around Easter, because we realized the students might have a better chance of answering questions around Easter than maybe another time of the year. It seems like students are more spiritually open to talking about that around Easter, because they know what it's about, but they may not celebrate it. But through that, we had a lot of students I can't remember. There's like 75% said they did not go to church. They maybe had never been in a church. Another part said, oh, yeah, I go to church. And we said, oh, cool, where do you go? And they say, oh, I go back home, like in St. Louis or wherever. And we said, oh, do you go there every weekend? And they said, we go like at Christmas and Easter, and that's about it, when I'm home for a break. We said, well, have you found a church here? And they said, no, I've got other stuff to do. I'm busy. I got homework. And it was just really heartbreaking to see a campus of about 6,000 to 7,000 kids that just didn't know or weren't going to a church, weren't being plugged into a community. And when you're not plugged into a church community, sometimes you try to find other ways to find community. And not most of the time. A lot of time those communities are not healthy for them. So right then and there, we realized that there was a problem at Missouri Western, and there was a huge opportunity to present the gospel in some way. So we decided our next mission field was Missouri Western itself. And we were like, well, how are we going to meet the kids in Missouri Western? You can ask Gilbert. We've invited people to Missouri Valley. We've even, put it in Gary's Amigo. I can understand turn it down with the Amigo because that's a little scrunched. But even, big cars, we even thought of a van. It just wasn't happening. Not a lot of people wanted to come. And so our thought was, well, how do we cut down the excuses? Let's have it on campus. So now they can just walk. We can walk over there, we can talk to them, and invite them. So, starting next week, we're doing a Bible study on campus on Sundays for 6 to 8 weeks. We're going to see how many students we can actually reach. Now, we're not saying every student's going to like this. Not every student just wants to sit down with a small group and say, all right, this is church. For the students that feel like, hey, I like this, but I want more, we're going to plug them into community churches like Missouri Valley. And so I will be gone for 6 to 8 weeks. Again, I'm sorry. I get here, jump back, I'm everywhere, I'm sorry. But this is the door. And this is another door that I've ran into. I've just followed the will of God, and I've been like, all right, what am I going to do? I'm like, being that annoying daughter that likes to challenge everything and be like, prove it. How about you do this? Huh? How about that? And I always do that. And I always come up here and I tell you guys, when I challenge God, he always does something radical. And I should know this by now, but I don't. So maybe this is the time. I don't know. I probably will keep challenging him. It's what I do. But we are going to do this study 6 to 8 weeks. We're going to see how many students show up. Kind of like those that went on the Council Bluffs trips. We talked to Cody, and he didn't want to do Sunday church or Sunday study. He said, well, I invited people on Wednesday nights, Thursday nights, and they're like, are you part of a cult? This is weird. And a lot of the kids at Missouri Western know of church, and they know what time church usually should be. So we're trying to make it as seamless as possible and not weird, but just so it feels more comfortable to them, to get them at least in the door. So I don't know how long I went. I think I went pretty close. Thank you for listening. I appreciate your prayers. Keep praying.
It's always interesting when God's work, because as Miranda was gone this summer,